And we'll begin the program.
Okay, sounds good.
Great. Well, thank you, folks. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this morning for our second Pennsylvania Tax Credit Program webinar. My name is Matt Dwyer, and I serve as Executive Director of Development for Holy Ghost Prep. And you may have had contacts or interactions with other members of our office, but as an office, we are the primary or the main fundraising arm of the school. As you know, or as you may imagine, we are a largely tuition-driven school. About 90 to 93% of all of our revenue for our school comes from tuition, and that other 7% comes from fundraising dollars. And that's our job and our role of the office. So we achieve those other fundraising dollars through a couple of things. Our annual fund, which has been very successful. Events that we host, fundraising events, whether it's the golf outing or the spring auction that we host every year. And then also a large portion of that is our EITC program, or the Pennsylvania Tax Credit Program. So, which actually represents upwards of 40 to 45% of all of that revenue. So you can see the impact, and we're going to talk about that impact today. Some of the other folks that we have on the call with us, I mentioned myself. Dana Samuel is our coordinator of development services. Dana will be helping me with the presentation. She'll keep an eye on any questions that you might have. If you want to type in the chat bar, Dana will take a look at those and stop me and ask those as well. If you do have questions throughout, feel free to raise your hand or just speak up and ask a question. We can answer as we go. We're also joined by several members of our development committee here at school. Chris Taylor is an alumni parent. He is also a participant in the EITC program, as well as Sean O'Hara, who's an alumni parent and a current parent. And Stan Gondek is also with us. He's also a current parent as well. And all three, Chris, Sean, and Stan, are participants of the program, which is great to hear that peer-to-peer testimony. And they might have a few words to say as well as questions come up. Our agenda for today is a couple of items. Our total agenda will really cover anywhere from 25 minutes to 30 minutes or so. So it's not an overly long program, but I think we'll unpack enough of the details around the program to give you enough information to make a decision on whether or not you're eligible, as well as whether or not you can participate. We will be recording this session, so we will be recording it and we'll share that later. We will also have the slides available later. We'll send that out in an email to everyone who attended today. We'll share that with you as well, so you have that as a reference. So we'll first talk about scholarship dollars at Holy Ghost Prep and why they are so important. We will cover, again, the details of the program itself. We'll talk about your eligibility and decipher whether or not you can ask yourselves the proper questions to decide if you're eligible or not. We have a few next steps, and then again, we'll have a Q&A time for questions at the end as well. So an overview of the program. Now, this is a true tax credit program. It's not a deduction, although a part of it can be deducted. It is a true tax credit program. It's a dollar for dollar tax credit program, and that is initiated through a charitable donation to a Holy Ghost Prep LLC. We like to say that this is a very minimal out-of-pocket cost, but you have the opportunity to maximize your scholarship impact to our school. The timing, big question always folks ask, is when am I asked to do this, or when can I think about it? You could really join anytime. Anytime today between now and November 20th is one of the, I would call it a soft deadline that we're setting. We'd really love for folks to think about, if they're thinking about it in this time period, to accomplish that before the end of the year. But we know how end of the year planning goes, and better to start now and to set ourselves a deadline. So we'd love for folks to join before Thanksgiving if possible. I'd just like to share an impact, a little bit about our merit and need-based scholarships is what I mentioned before. So 20% of our entire annual budget is dedicated to our merit and need-based scholarship program. And for us, that's more than $2 million. So that's over $2 million every year. That does a couple of things. It improves accessibility to our school. It supports diversity to our school. Over 50% of our student body receives some form of merit and need-based scholarship. In some years, that even reaches 60% of our entire student body is on some form of merit and need-based scholarship. So you can see how wide and broad the impact of those scholarship dollars can be. In terms of the impact, we always talk about, one of the biggest advantages we have at Holy Ghost Prep is the personal attention that we can give to our students. We do that through a couple of ways. One is our small class size. That student to teacher ratio right now is hovering right at 18 or 17% to 1. 18 to 1 student to teacher ratio. So that's a great way that we do that. We also do that through a highly qualified, educated, and motivated faculty and staff. So they're one of, if not one of our biggest assets to the school. That's the good news. The challenging news is affordability. And that is the number one reason why there are certain instances with certain students that cannot have the opportunity to attend Holy Ghost Prep is affordability. And that's why this program itself plays such a big role at our school. How do we fund these merit and need-based scholarships? Well, a couple of ways that we talked about before. So Holy Ghost annual fund donations that we do every year. You've heard of the annual fund that happens. We do a fall mailing. We do some end of the year appeals. We do a spring mailing. We do Giving Tuesday is another big program that we have that's been really successful. So whether those are restricted or unrestricted dollars, that makes up the annual fund. We also have named scholarships where families have decided to name a scholarship that would follow a student for 4 years through their time at Holy Ghost Prep, whether that's named after a family or named in memory of a loved one. We have over a dozen of those named scholarships. We also receive endowment income every year. Our total endowment is just over $4 million. Each year that produces over $125,000 that we add into that merit and need-based scholarship pool. And then finally, what we're talking about today, the PA tax credit program, or EITC, OSTC donations, makes up just about $420,000 of that $2 million total. So again, you can see how significant it is and how impactful this program can be. So what does it stand for? All these, EITC and OSTC, what does it stand for? Well, the EITC program stands for Educational Improvement Tax Credit Program, EITC. The OSTC stands for the Opportunity Scholarship Tax Credit Program. And what's their purpose? Well, the EITC program is specifically for scholarships for students that fall within a lower household income range. Collectively, that benchmark is around $85,000 to $90,000 collectively of a household income. Those families that fall below that are eligible for EITC dollars. OSTC, which is the second program, you would still have to hit the household income requirement. Students are still fall within that requirement. But secondly, for OSTC, students that fall or live within the boundaries of a lower achieving public school district are also have access to OSTC dollars. So OSTC, there's two criteria. One is the income criteria. The second is they have to live within the boundaries of a lower achieving public school district. And what happens is every year the state of Pennsylvania puts out a list of all of those school districts, of which we have a handful, a group of our students live within those boundaries. So they're eligible for OSTC. The history of the program has been around for a while, almost 20 years. It's been around since 2001 when EITC was established and signed into law. And at the time, that actually made Pennsylvania, we were one of the first states to pass an education tax credit program specifically aimed at corporations and businesses. So the genesis of the program was specifically designated for corporations and businesses. OSTC was later established in 2013. And in the last few years, I'd say the last 4 years, individuals have now been able to sign up and to participate in the program. So, which has been a wonderful, it's really been a sea change for the program itself. And we know has been a windfall for a lot of private schools, just like ours. You can see down below how much has been budgeted for both programs. Back in 2001 in one total, they were at $30 million was budgeted each year. Now in 2020, we're over $240 million has been budgeted for this program. So you can see the popularity and the growth of the program has been really positive. Now you might be saying, well, $240 million, wow, that is a lot of money. And you're right, it is a lot of money. But when you look at in comparison to the overall state budget for Pennsylvania, for example, our state budget is $34.1 billion with a B, $34.1 billion. The percentage of this program actually is less than 1%. So of all the dollars they commit to it, it's still less than 1%. It's actually 0.6% of the state budget. The education budget for the state is $13.4 billion. And the percentage that this program makes up just of the education budget is 1.7%. So I just say that, I share that for context, because a lot of folks have asked us over the years, they've said, well, this is a lot of money, or is the state going to continue to do this? And we think that it will. Everything is pointing toward that the state will keep this as part of the budget. One, because of its popularity and how impactful it is. And two, because it's a lesser amount. It's only making up 0.6% of the entire budget. So we think those are positive signs. The benefits, both programs, whether you're an individual or whether you are a business, both programs allow individuals to receive and businesses to receive up to a 90% tax credit against their personal PA state tax liability. So if you sign up for a 2-year agreement, you would receive a 90% tax credit. If you did that for 1 year and you signed on for a 1-year agreement, which are pretty rare, we've only had a few folks that have signed on for 1-year agreements, it would be a 75% tax credit for just a 1-year agreement. Again, it's a tax credit, a dollar for dollar tax credit against your taxes, and it's really much more valuable than a deduction. How it works for business. Businesses are required to apply in July. July 1 is the deadline for businesses to apply. You would go on the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development website, and you would actually apply for your business. That's done via lottery selection. So if you were to apply on July 1st, you would be put in a pool or a lottery for all of the businesses that apply on that specific day. They would pull them out randomly and they would assign dollars based on that lottery system. If you are applying as a business, you would either be approved or you would be put on a waiting list. And then to get off of the waiting list, an approved business would have to give their dollars back or basically not use their dollars within the allotted time that they have to do it. If you were to be approved, in that instance, a business would donate to an EITC, OSTC approved scholarship organization, one of which is Holy Ghost Prep. And that amount would typically equal the amount you were approved for. We would then use those dollars again for tuition assistance to those eligible students. How it works for an individual, which we think is the more popular side of things and the more eligible side of things for our families here at Holy Ghost Prep. We run our program through an organization called BLOCS. BLOCS stands for, as you can see on the slide there, Business Leaders of Catholic Schools. So BLOCS administers our entire program. BLOCS is an organization that we have been partnering with for over the last 5 years. They administer the entire program really from start to finish. They talk with our families about the agreements. Our families would sign the agreements through BLOCS. They would manage those for them. They would send their check to BLOCS as part of a BLOCS LLC. They would send those checks to Blocks for their deposit and processing. Blocks then sends us, Holy Ghost Prep, the check from the amount of dollars that they've received from Holy Ghost Prep families. We use those for scholarships. Blocks also, at the end of the year, will send each of those donors that are in that LLC their K-1 form, so they can file that. They can submit that with their tax filing. They really administer the program from start to finish. And for us, that's well worth it, although Blocks does charge a small percentage, an administrative fee for all of our donations that we receive. For us, it's very worthwhile because Blocks does a couple of things. One, in the Blocks program, they apply for all of the dollars through the state. So I mentioned before that application process that businesses have to go through, and they have to apply on July 1, then they get put into a lottery system. Then if they're selected, they can begin the process at that point. Blocks does all that. Blocks immediately right now has available dollars for our families to join. They have available LLCs for our families to join. So for us, the administrative work is one benefit, but also the fact that they already have dollars in hand that they can award to our families to participate is a real benefit for us. So how this works for an individual as well, you as an individual, you would join an LLC. The technical term is special purpose entity. These entities have been created for the specific purpose of this program. To join the LLC, you would sign an agreement. They send that via DocuSign. So you could sign that electronically. Once that document is signed, you would then send in your check for the amount that you have determined that you would like to participate in the program. They then send those dollars back to Holy Ghost Prep, as I mentioned before, to be used for scholarships for our eligible students. The process it's fairly straightforward. It's fairly direct. I think one of the questions that folks will ask themselves before they begin this process or before they join is, how much should I give, or how much should I participate at what level? And we'll talk about that. We have one criteria that I suggest that families use to determine that amount. So for example, let's take an amount. Let's take an amount of $5,000. We've put this illustration together so you can see what a scenario would look like. So if you have an estimated annual state income tax of $5,000, for example, you want to participate in the program, you could join a Blocks LLC designated for our donors. You could donate that $5,000 that you owe the state of Pennsylvania to that Blocks LLC for the benefit of Holy Ghost Prep. At the end of the year, Blocks will deliver to you a K-1 form, which is similar to a 1099. That K-1 form will represent $5,000 that you can then apply to your Pennsylvania state income tax liability. Now, the state of Pennsylvania will give you credit for 90% of that $5,000 donation, or $4,500. You will still have a balance of $500, or 10%, to the state, owed to the state of Pennsylvania. However, as an added bonus or an added benefit to the program, that $500 is actually considered a charitable donation. So that is deductible on your federal tax return if you choose to itemize that. So that gives you just an additional benefit to the program, and it sweetens the pot a little bit more. So I've broken down some numbers here. Again, this is just a shorter version of what I just described, but a cash gift to the Holy Ghost Prep LLC for $5,000, tax credit of $4,500, a net federal tax reduction for that contribution of $185 if you're in the 37, we just did 37% tax rate. Out-of-pocket cost is $315 to contribute $5,000. So you see, I highlighted that in red below, that $315 out-of-pocket cost equals an impact of $5,000 to scholarships for Holy Ghost Prep. So that's math that we love, and that is really the essence of why we feel at school that this program it's truly a win-win. It's a win-win for our school as an institution. It's a win-win for it's a win for our donors and our families that want to support our school and know the value of a Holy Ghost prep education and can see that. So I think those numbers tell a big story right there. So are you eligible? Well, yes, any business or individual that has a state tax liability within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is eligible to participate in either program. There is a minimum donation that Blocks requests. They request a minimum of $3,000 donation for the program. That's not a benchmark that the state has, but it's a benchmark that Blocks has set. Typically, our donors typically fall in the range of anywhere from 3,000. There's a lot at the 5, 7, and beyond level. So we have we have folks that are in the 5-figure level and that are participating in the program. So what I would say is regardless of where you might fall on that spectrum, every dollar to the program counts, and every dollar at every level is going to have an impact on those students that will have difficulty affording the Holy Ghost prep experience. So, but those are some ranges. I think I'll pause there. I will mention one question that I talked about before. So a lot of folks get to this point and they say, well, I'm eligible, but how much should I give? And how do I come up with that number? Well, one of the first things that you can do is you can review your 2019 tax returns. So what you filed in 2019 will tell you what your tax bill or burden was to the state of Pennsylvania last year. So look at that number, see what that number is, and that could be a starting point for what you might consider in participating in the program. I always encourage folks to think about, they have their number that they paid last year. Maybe you think about 70% or 80% or even 90% of that number to ensure that your tax liability will be close to the same of that number. What ends up happening is a lot of folks might say, well, I had this last year, I made this last year, but I don't know exactly what I'm going to make this year. How do I determine that? Well, if you want to be conservative about it, folks can think about, maybe 80 or 90% of what their liability was last year participating in the program. So that's one kind of starting point, but I'm going to pause there. I don't know if Dana, you've seen any questions getting typed in or if anyone's raised their hand, but maybe I'll just pause. And I know I've been talking for about 20 minutes. So that's a lot to digest, and you don't have to be an expert in it. It's definitely a process, but we're here to help with that. And if anyone has their hand up, we'll answer some questions for you.
I don't see any questions in the chat just yet. I don't believe I've seen any hands up.
Okay. So I'll go to our next slide here. And I talked about what a next step might be. And, you've heard the details of it. It sounds very positive, something that you'd like to think about. Well, what's next? And first, as I mentioned, you can review your 2019 tax return to establish your PA state tax liability amount.
Matt, 1 second.
Yes.
We do have a question. Is there a similar lottery process for individuals that is like the businesses?
Great question. And no, there's not. And that is the benefit of using the Blocks organization, which again is a Catholic organization. They only support Catholic schools, and there is no lottery system. I could call, to give you an example, our representative, Jeff Gibson at Blocks, I could call him today and say, I'd like you to place this donor in one of your LLCs. And his next question would simply be, I just need their name, first and last, and I also need the amount that they would like to contribute or participate in with the program. So Blocks has not an unlimited amount. I will say that. They have a significant amount that they are able to award and assign, not an unlimited amount, which is why I always say, if we can get folks in sooner rather than later, we'll be better off. Because as you could imagine, as we get towards the end of the year, the calendar year, their LLCs do fill up and they start to gain more donors and more folks want to participate. So I always encourage folks, now's a great time, the sooner the better, but you will not have any wait at all to get into a Blocks LLC. They're, as they say, operators are standing by waiting for a call, so we can sign you up ASAP. And to do that, you would just reach out to me. You would just reach out to me and indicate that you're interested. We could either have a quick phone call about that, and I could give you some more detail around signing an agreement, or I could connect you immediately over email with Jeff Gibson, who's my contact at Blocks, and Jeff would ask a few questions, and then he would send you an agreement for the DocuSign process. You would send your check donation. They typically like it to arrive within 7 days of the agreement. So usually once you sign it, their expectation is that you're basically putting a check in the mail within the next 24 to 48 hours. So those are our next steps. I've got some contact information for you there, but we have the benefit of having just a great development committee here at school, and that committee is growing, and a few of our members are on with the call today, and they've all participated in the program, and I'd love to hear from some of them. I know Chris Taylor is on the line, and Chris has been participating. I think this might be your second or third year, Chris, but Chris, do you want to share a quick comment about your experience and maybe lend a positive thought to the presentation?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Chris Taylor. As I said prior, I have two sons that matriculated through Holy Ghost. I think I spoke to you last year in the summertime, and Matt kind of told me about this. I ended up calling the Blocks guy, or I gave Matt the Blocks, my phone number to give the Blocks. They called me. They were very receptive. They'll jump on the phone with you and explain everything, make you feel comfortable with it. But it is my second year. I listened to the prior the prior one that you had done, Matt, about a week ago. And there's a gentleman on there that says, when something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. So you kind of look at it with some skepticism. This, however, as he pointed out, and I would fully agree, sounds too good to be true, but it isn't. It's real. And so it's easy to sign up. The paperwork's easy. It's all DocuSign. You get a K-1. It's not intimidating. My actual tax advisor is from New Jersey, so he was completely unfamiliar with the program. I sent him just a link to a little bit about Blocks. He figured it out in 10 minutes and filed the paperwork for me. I'm actually self-employed, so from my perspective, last year I wrote a check for the amount that I contributed. This year, he just created estimated payments that are lower, quarterly payments that are lower, taking into account my contribution here. So it's even better for me from a cash flow perspective. But again, it's very simple to do. All the dollars, I saw a quick question, do the dollars go to Holy Ghost? All of these dollars do go to Holy Ghost. If we designate it Holy Ghost, it goes to Holy Ghost, not to this big pool of Catholic schools. Your dollars will go directly to Holy Ghost Prep. So again, very easy to do. And the Blocks folks on the telephone are very accommodating, very informative, will walk you through it, make you feel comfortable. It's a very good program.
Matt, we do have a couple more questions.
Thanks, Chris. Sure, go ahead, Dana.
And we did just answer that, is it shared with HGP families or other Catholic schools? And it's all up to the donor. Again, what you designate is where it goes. We have a question. If you request a deadline for filing your state return, would that affect the donation?
If you request a deadline for your state return, would that, well, the schedule for, it depends. If that goes past the next calendar year, it would not, only because you're asked to typically make your annual donation for this program in the September-October timeframe. So if you're in this program and you're extending your taxes for multiple years, you could do that. If it's a couple months extension, no big deal. You could extend your taxes for a couple of years. You could still participate in the program because you'll have the K-1. That said, your donation for the program is really required in the September timeframe. So we know some folks that are in the program now that they're just sending their checks in now. So it's early October, which is about that timeframe. So I would say, no, it doesn't affect your donation, but you have to make it in the September timeframe, regardless of when you're going to ultimately pay your taxes. Hopefully that answers that question.
Okay, we have another one from Nancy. It says, not sure if I understand the 85 to 90K qualification. Nancy, do you want to unmute yourself and expand on that question a little bit?
Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to unmute. Yeah, I mean, early on in the presentation, you said if you make under $85,000 to $90,000, you're not eligible. I'm just not sure I understand that.
Right, and so when I referred to let's just we'll call it $90,000. So that's on the other side of how we award the dollars. So it really has nothing to do with participating in the program. I was just explaining that on the donor side, it has nothing to do with. I was just explaining that for our students to be eligible for those dollars, they would have to live in a household that makes less than $90,000.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with donation. But on that point, I mean, is it just flat up income? Because if I make $90,000 and I have 5 kids, how does, you know what I'm saying? My tax liability is different than somebody has 1 kid.
That's true, and they have accelerators for that. So if that's, I believe that's a standard household, which I think is 2 children. So they do have increases. So if you live in a household that has 5 children, you could add a certain amount. I think they let you add about $15,000 on for each additional child to still fall below that income threshold if you're applying for the program. And our students, typically when our students apply, we have this pool of dollars that we distribute every year. That pool of dollars falls within the standard within all of the merit and need-based scholarship dollars that we give out. So we give those dollars out as students apply to Holy Ghost Prep. A student who's a current student at Holy Ghost Prep doesn't necessarily apply for an EITC grant. They could get one because we have those dollars available to give them to them, but it really falls within that entire tuition and merit and need-based scholarship process that our families go through before they're enrolled.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to take you off topic.
No, that's good. That's a good question because, everyone asks, you always want to know the why and answer the question, the why. Well, the why is these scholarship dollars are impacting so many students. And I always like to give some background about scholarship dollars and how they're distributed and what part of the budget they are. They represent a really big part of the budget. So it's a great question, and it's good for people to at least be aware of that because then they know the value of what they're supporting. And
Right.
I think hopefully it inspires folks to see that, to hear that, to say to themselves, I'm going to go back and look at my tax returns from last year. What did I pay the state of Pennsylvania? I'm going to think about how much I can contribute. I'm going to give Matt a call or send Matt an email and find out how I can get connected with blocks. You can also talk to one of our development committee members. On our next slide here, I listed each of them that are on here. Chris is on here. Sean O'Hara, who participates, and Sean has an accounting and finance background, so another great asset. And then Stan is another current parent, and Stan is participating this year. And he's gone through the process, and he's figured out a couple of the wrinkles, and Stan even has a direct contact with one of the folks who works in the Department of Revenue when he applies for his taxes. So we've really built up some really great resources that we can help people through the process to make it as easy as possible.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Thanks for your question.
Okay, Matt, we have another question. Can you help explain the 7-day deadline for blocks to send in after signing the LLC to send in the donation check? Because they're saying the taxes are already withheld. So how does that donation work? Why is there a timeline?
Well, that's just when you sign so you sign the agreement to join the LLC, but your true participation as being a member in the LLC is sending the check, is sending your check in. So they have multiple members in each LLC. So they might have 10 members in a specific LLC for a specific dollar amount. So if you're one of those members and they want to close out that LLC or fill the LLC, they'd like to have everyone's checks in to do that. And then they can close that LLC out. They can draft the K-1 form, and they can really conclude that process. Now, in terms of when you pay your taxes, folks would typically fall into two categories. One, if like Chris said, Chris is self-employed, so he takes out those quarterly, those quarterly statements that he'll pay every quarter, and he'll do that on his own, and he might send in his check every quarter. If you're, if you work for a company or a business or a school, you have automatic withholdings that they will withhold from you. So if you're paying your taxes throughout the year, whether it's a quarterly manner and you work for your own company, then you can determine that schedule, and you can factor in the fact that you're participating in the program. So you can do that math and you can plan that out. If you are having your taxes withheld throughout the year from your monthly paycheck, then that amount can be refunded back to you at the end of the year. So that's a wrinkle, a very important and key wrinkle that you'll want to be aware of. So I've already been paying my taxes for the past 10 months. Here we are in October. So I'm paying those taxes. I've paid almost let's just take the example, that $5,000 example. If you're someone, you've already paid close to that $5,000 liability, well, at the end of the year, you would actually ask for a refund for that $5,000 that you've paid already. And you would then submit your K-1 form as the manner in which you'd like to pay your taxes. So there's a process there. You would fill out what's called the OC. It's called other credits in your filing. In that other credit form, you would list those dollars that you've already paid in taxes, and the state would refund those. Now, that does take some time. Typically, when you apply for that refund, it typically takes several more months or additional months to get that refund back. So that's definitely a step that folks would have to take, and there's some liquidity consideration there. If you pay your taxes, if you essentially make your donation now in October, the refund would be delayed by a couple of months, and you just want to make sure that you can factor out or budget for that amount, not getting that amount back for several more months. So hopefully I answered that. Anything anyone else wants to add to that, Chris or Sean or Stan or anyone? But I think I answered that question. Were there any others, Dana, that you saw there?
Nope, that's it for questions on the chat. Oh, we're getting thank yous from everybody.
Good, great. So yeah, it looks like we've been talking for about 45 minutes here. So hopefully that was productive. Think about this slide, this next step slide. Take a look at your 2019 return. It's a great launching point to participate, and then reach out and give us a call. We will also be reaching out. We'll send the slide deck out. We'll send the link to the YouTube page. We'll put this up on YouTube. So we'll have the link to this. We'll have the slide deck. reach out to any of our committee members. We've got some great committee members. So thanks to Chris and to Sean and to Stan for being a part of it. Another current parent, Rick Henn, was another current parent who's on the development committee and helped with some of these slides and helping us to really craft our messaging the best way possible. So thanks everyone. We appreciate it. And hopefully we look forward to talking to you soon. And thanks for supporting Holy Ghost Prep. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you.